Hey folks, Mr. Francis here. I'm going to give you some quick tips on how to write a story. Now I'm going to use a story that I wrote a few years ago as an example called Respecting Mr. Ravi. Now, first thing is, it's really important that you have an idea in your head, of course. So I highly recommend, number one, you find a way to summarize your idea, your story, in 1 to 3 sentences. Now, I'll give you an example from Respecting Mr. Ravi. When Alex learns how poorly the school's custodian, Mr. Ravi, is being treated, he decides to make Mr. Ravi the focus of a multicultural project. His goal is to get the entire school to start respecting Mr. Ravi. Okay, so step number 2. It's important that you follow an outline. So I have one that I think you might want to use. So first thing is, you want to have a way of catching the reader's attention right at the very beginning of your story. So you want to have some action or some shocking part of your story that will really make the reader interested. Second part is you want to then ground the reader. You want to kind of make sure that the reader has a knowledge of where the story is taking place and a little bit of getting to know the characters. Step number 3, you want to then build the characters. You want to kind of get to know the characters. We want to get to know their personalities and who they are. Step 4, this is where you want to now establish some kind of conflict. You want to at least develop it or build on a conflict of some sort. Step 5 is you want to now establish that conflict. You want the conflict to actually exist. You want to have the conflict come to its height. It's heightened. It's at its peak. Step 6 is you now want to solve the conflict. You want to have the conflict all figured out so that in your last little bit, which is the part I always enjoy with my stories, is this final step, step 7, is you want to add some kind of twist. Some twist that will get the reader to want more. Okay, the third stage is to summarize your story. I highly recommend that you try to summarize it in 1 page. So you've already at the beginning, stage 1, you've more or less given me a general idea, or given us a general idea of your story in 1 to 3 sentences. And then you've now used this template. This is stage 2, where you've used this template to kind of create and fill in the blanks to kind of develop your story. But now can you summarize it? So stage 3 is to summarize your story in 1 page. So what I've given your teacher in addition to this video is an outline. So what I've done is I've plugged in my story, Respecting Mr. Ravi, the summarized version of my story. I plugged it into that template that we talked about in the second stage of writing. So have a look at that and you'll be able to see how I've been able to have a shocking beginning, establish the characters, start developing the characters and their personalities, getting into like developing the conflict, establishing the conflict, solving the conflict, and then of course having a neat twist. And you'll see how I've done that with Respecting Mr. Ravi. Finally, I've given your teacher some neat little tips. I hope they work, but simply I want you to be aware of your tenses, whether it's past tense or present tense. Make sure that you're consistent, because otherwise it's going to sound really, really weird. For example, I'll read one that I have. How does this sound to you? Rylan ran around the corner, hoping desperately to find the secret door. As he turns the corner, he sees the door and walks in. What's wrong with that sentence, or those 2 sentences? Do you see the difference in the tenses there? The other tip is I want you to build your characters. I want to get to know your character. The reader wants to know and care about the characters that you have in your story. Otherwise, it just becomes this kind of tedious little story, and we don't care about the results because we don't care about the characters. Also, when it comes to the point of view, this is another important thing. When you're writing your stories, think about whose inner thoughts are we reading. We just want to read one person's inner thoughts. Otherwise, we get confused. Okay, so that's something else you need to consider. And good luck with writing your stories. I hopefully would love to be able to read them one day. Thanks.